Oh boy. Okay. We have the mother load right now of documents that many people have been working to keep under wraps. And now we know why. The Tennessee Star has now obtained the self-deletion note left by that loser that went into, did what they did in Nashville. Before what happened on, March 27th last year. By the way, later in this video, we're going to talk about how this individual had called the self-help lines multiple times, and their ravings were ignored. This is about a total systemic collapse and failure. They were born a biological woman, but identified as a man at the time of the incidents. The existence of the note was confirmed on April 4th, 2023, when an inventory of items seized from the search were finally published. So there appears to be a massive, somebody who's looking out inside this police department, because for some reason, a bunch of parents of those who lost their life that day have been working hard in court to prevent the release of these documents. Here, FBI memo on protection of legacy tokens sent to the Nashville PD. It opposed the release of the documents. Why would the FBI care? They seem to not mind when it's a Trump supporter. They then wrote about their mental state. I've been anxious all week, all day, stressed. A list of prescriptions that they were given from Vanderbilt University Medical Center, published by the Star on Thursday, did not include medications specifically to treat bipolar. Instead, the prescriptions issued were used to treat depression and anxiety. Among the 80 pages are 5 entries in which they mention their father, Ronald, including an undated entry in which they express the desire to end him and other cranky and mentally ill men.
It's kind of sad that that Jeremy can't even read the story or tell you what it's about, and has to use these code words. And it's also tragic, the story. It's tragic for the kids that got shot. It's tragic that that young individual who apparently hated men but became a man, they got plenty of help. They got help from Vanderbilt. They got help from their school. They got help from all over the place. Not the kind of help that would keep them alive or mentally healthy. They had people who profited from their problem the whole time. Do you think Vanderbilt does that type of transaction for free? Do you think that's a charity like the Shriners and they're just helping children over there? I'm not saying the Shriners do. I'm just saying they have that shtick where they have the children's hospitals, and they do help burn victims, and that's very important. But they also do some other things that might be not what they publicly talk about. What did you think, Scott?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that whole segment there, but specifically around the Nashville situation. I've been listening to a lot of this coverage, a lot of these Tennessee Star reports that are coming out. He was totally right that there was like a whole series of them that dropped.
Yeah, you're in Tennessee. You're on ground zero.
Ground zero, yeah, man. Like it was just not too far from where I live. Like it was like maybe 3 miles from where I live, where Covenant School is, and I don't really have any boots on the ground knowledge that nobody else has, but this particular, like, one of the things that really stood out to me in this new batch of information that came out is like that they were reporting on all of her medications. And one of the things, let's see, I pulled it up here, buspirone. So basically she was on several different like anti-anxiety. Anyway, so it says buspirone, Lexapro, escitalopram, and hydroxyzine. Anyway, one of the things, so we know with a lot of these medications, right, it creates like bursts of anger and like just like aggression, right? But also this one is really interesting where it talks about buspirone, talks about musculoskeletal pain, tremors. So it's like feelings of discomfort in one's own body. You know what I mean? And it's almost like these prescription drugs create a condition by which a person doesn't feel comfortable in their own body. You know what I mean?
Which
and
was the problem in the first place, right?
Yes. And so it's like, are these medications like causing the condition, like the combination of like the physical like discomfort with being in one's own body combined with the social conditioning? Like, is this just leading people down a path towards making these decisions that just, if like all of these medications were removed, would this person still feel this way about themselves and have the same outlook?
I would say the same. I think you're onto something there, and I would say the same for their environment.
Yeah.
if they were not forced into a place where they involuntarily associate with people and compulsory indoctrination and all this other stuff, if they were being unschooled, if they were being homeschooled, if they were being private schooled, if they were actually being educated, do you think they would have these problems? Do you think if they were a well-adjusted person who can encounter obstacles and use a process to solve those obstacles, which is the key to mental health in the first place, being able to overcome obstacles using a method or a system, maybe they wouldn't be like that in the first place. Or maybe that system is created to do exactly what it's been doing because they've been drugging kids for a long time. That's why Brett Veinotte had started this School Sucks podcast, because he was working at a school and he had to take a tackle box of medications on the field trips for these kids because they were all on meds. So that's been a problem for 20, 30 years. And now they have like a worse suicide problem than they did in the 90s. They have a whole bunch of other problems that didn't even exist in the 90s. It's like maybe newer is not better. Maybe some traditional old world type of methods and skills are what we need, instead of sending people into the world unprepared to be surrounded at all times by predators and people who take them down on social media. I mean, it is not easy being a kid these days, I'm sure. It's a lot different than when we grew up.
Yeah, I literally can't imagine, you know what I mean? Nor if I ever do have kids, would I ever want to subject them to such conditions that is going on in public schools these days. Like, no way, man. It's just a nightmare. I feel sad for anybody that's having to go through that. Like, I went through public school and I feel like
I did
I'm
too, yeah.
relatively well adjusted. Like I don't know. I got some street smarts through it and learned how to like have some thick skin, I guess. But like, it was like boot camp for, in a lot of different ways. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I just think it's nowadays. Don't trust me. I'm not like defending it or anything, but it's like, but it's
No,
like
just
nowadays, it's like, dude, no way.
some
Just
people,
whatever you do.
some people, the symptoms aren't as obvious as with other people, but
Yeah.
everyone's afflicted by it because what we didn't get
Yeah.
was an education that we still need to get as adults in order to survive and thrive.
Totally.
So, yeah, it's a big waste of 15,000 hours that could have been used to learn the actual things we needed to learn. But then we wouldn't have politicians taking lobbyist money and New World Order using our country as a prophylactic to bang the world right now.
Yeah.
So you'd have that.
Exactly.
But
Exactly. What was that?
Go ahead.
Well, so there was that one I've seen it on the show before, but I cannot remember for the life of me. And I'll write it down this time so I can save it. But it was like some report that came out. It was a government report that basically like just insinuated or basically said like we can't let the people get too smart. Like they can only get like up to a certain threshold in their intellect, but they can't go further than that. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was like a
yeah, I mean, there's a
report,
bunch of different. I mean, that's mentioned by like Lippmann and Bernays about
Okay.
public opinion being used, the attitudes and behavior. Well, let me just.
It was like a state memorandum 200 type report or something like that. It was like some sort of like government like memorandum report. I remember you guys covered it on the show at one point, and I was just like,
Do you remember any
"Whoa."
keywords? Can we use clip meaning?
I wish I don't off the top of my head. Yeah, but I don't.
Yeah,
But
because
I
there's a
just-
lot of examples of they, them, those who would like to keep us
Yeah.
dumb, and they say it various ways. Like, can I reach the book? Check this out. Let's use a book cam for a second. Now, this is something I would usually read to autonomy students on a Sunday Q&A type session, and it would come up in the lecture, and I'd say, somebody asked me at Sunday Q&A for the quote, but this is Alexander the Great, one of the, a guy who conquered the world in this time, died at a young age, had Oliver Stone make a film about him, et cetera, et cetera. This is Alexander the Great is chastising Aristotle, who's his teacher. Aristotle's his teacher, and so he writes this letter back. So this, let's see, go wrong one. How about this one? All right. So this comes from the 100 most influential books ever written. The history of thought from ancient times to today. This is actually a really good book because I like these condensations, and then you can go, oh, I like the Tao Te Ching. I want to go read that. So it gives you the reason to read the classics, right? So there's the Prince. Here it is. Let's see if I can get it on the screen. Boom, boom, boom. Alexander to Aristotle, greeting. You have not done well to publish your books on oral doctrine. What is there now that we can excel others in, if those things which we have been particularly instructed be laid open to all? For my part, I assure you, I had rather excel others in the knowledge of what is excellent than in the extent of my power and dominion. Farewell. Now that's interesting, right? Because what's he saying? He said, you can't go teaching the people grammar, logic, and rhetoric, especially the rhetoric part. He didn't want them to learn how to think. He didn't want them to learn how to observe. And he didn't want them especially to learn how to talk back. He's like, this is how we rule people, bro. You can't be writing books telling people how to do this. So there's other examples in history where they said, slaves can't, not that they can't read, that it's illegal to teach a slave to read, all the way back to the Greek times, right? So people who have to labor every day for their survival don't have time to read. The people who are not plundered and have enough excess to be able to say, I'm going to become a well-read person, a person of books, then they start to read this history, and they find out it's like the great books of the Western world is called the Great Conversation, because it goes on for like thousands of years, from one question to the next question to the next question of how our society is built. And so understanding that for a long time, not only were shows like this not possible, like if this was the time of when the king is going around, like he's still a king, you couldn't talk smack on the king. They will execute you. That was a thing back in the day. There was no, Grand Theft World, they would have been done with that. So we live in a time when, because of free speech still existing, you can speak truth to power in many ways, and they don't like it. But if they don't like it, they can come back with logic, reason, evidence, and education, and not smart bombs and F-16s and whatever else they threaten people with, because the threats of violence just mean that they're intellectually bankrupt. And that means you've already won. So don't sink down to their level by doing something in a revolutionary military armament type. You're not going to win. Look at what they do with your tax dollars, bro. You got to outsmart and change the game. Go over where they're not, instead of going where they are, super well defended. Like, that would be so un-Sun Tzu, to take up arms against this oppressor. They would love it. They would love it. They'd make an example. Look at J6. People didn't even bring Second Amendment to January 6th. And people were like, it was an insurrection because they used harsh words and went outside the velvet rope. I'm like, bro, you ever watched Civil War in another country? It is brutal and bloody. And then they lie to everybody about it, like the Rwandan genocide.
Yeah.
It was the other way around. The people who got slaughtered, you don't know their story. You know the story of the people who slaughtered them. And yeah, it's just a whole Corbett reported. Check it out.
Totally. And it's like, that's what they want. They want us to engage with them on that level, like with playing their game by their rules, violence, they want that so bad.
Yeah. They don't want you learning oral doctrine. That's what they don't want you doing. Learning how to public speaking, getting rid of your fear, those sort of things. They don't want you doing that. Alexander, all the way up through Biden.
Nope, exactly. And then I just love the solution to all of this is so easy. Like, we just need to create our own, like the parallel society, the agorist approach to just creating our own systems and just, pulling out and just be like, no, thanks. I'm over here doing my own thing. Like, someday, I don't know, like there needs to be some like Catherine Austin Fitts has like the
Solari.
Solari. And then she talks a lot about like no cash, like Fridays or something like that. I can't remember what it is. She's like, there's a movement no credit, like only spend cash on like a certain day. Like, if we just or if we just did like acts of like I've heard people talk about it, like just don't engage with the economy at all, like one day a month, every month, everybody. We can get everybody to
no Fed Fridays.
No spend. Yeah, don't spend a single cent. Don't go to work. Don't do anything, like one day out of the month, and the whole thing would just collapse. And we would, it's like we do have all the cards. Like, we do, like, we are many, they are few, and we have all the cards, and we could literally flex that at any point collectively. Like, it would take a massive movement to get everybody on board. But I mean, that would be something. And it's like wishful thinking, but that would be it.
Well, twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.